He was one of Liverpool's most powerful gangsters, but raid on Stash House changed everything.
103 at sea. Hello? Where are you, mate? Right, so what injuries have you got, mate? Just sit yourself down.
There's ambulance here, mate. Is it just
you alright there, mate?
Yeah, just the arm, lad, yeah.
Right, so just need that. Is it still bleeding?
I'm not sure.
Right, let's have a quick look, mate. How you doing, fella? You alright?
So again,
Who's responsible for this?
Just have a look at him, mate. Yeah.
Where are they at the moment?
hello,
Right.
still here now.
Where have you been stabbed, mate?
Just cut on the arm.
Cut on your arm. Any idea who's responsible for it?
Where have you got injuries?
Masks. No.
Have you had anywhere else?
Right, mate. Let's just have a quick look at your arm. So what's happened, bud?
Just coming up the bike. And just the door. Right.
Couple of lads have burst in. Any idea who they are? Say again.
Didn't burst in, the door was
This looks like that one. Just do us a favour, raise your arm above your head for it. Yeah, just keep it raised. It's just going to stop blood flow from now until he's can have a look at it.
Right, I'm going to make him now.
Yeah.
What about like
No, it's
He's got
sorry,
quite a nice
mate,
nasty one to his right arm, mate.
looks like it's quite open. Bit of a like flesh, just exactly where my hand is here.
Is there any injuries on the chest? No idea, mate. Where is
Back here and inside. Yeah, right. Sorry, mate. Sorry.
okay on this one?
Romeo 103. Amber on scene, mate. Apologies, Amber on scene. We have got 2 males, both is there. Multiple stab wounds by the looks of it, just being assessed now.
On today's crime episode, we cover one of Liverpool's powerful gang. He was one of Liverpool's most powerful gangsters, but raid on Stash House changed everything. Vincent Coggins and his brother Francis as the leaders of a menacing gang who used EncroChat to conduct their shadowy business. Vincent Coggins, 58, of Woodpecker Close, West Derby, who was jailed for 28 years after he pleaded guilty to conspiracy to supply Class A drugs and conspiracy to commit blackmail. A bloody raid on a stash house that saw a dad and son slashed, and £1 million of cocaine stolen sparked a chain of events that led to the downfall of one of Liverpool's most powerful gangsters. Vincent Coggins sat at the top of an organized crime group OCG, involved in the supply of huge amounts of cocaine and heroin across the UK. Coggins and his brother Francis, brought up in Knowsley's Cantrell Farm in the 1970s and 80s, built their powerful drug gang from nothing into a bona fide cartel that rivaled criminal factions from Ireland, Eastern Europe, and South America. Sources previously told that the pair avoided disputes and silly fallouts wherever possible, but they also were not afraid of ordering devastating violence to be carried out on anyone who compromised their interests. On the morning of Saturday, May 23rd, 2020, the targeted attack, conducted by rival gangsters who knew whose drugs were stashed there, saw the homeowner and his son severely assaulted and huge amounts of cocaine stolen. Vincent Coggins, along with his criminal associates, including his right-hand man, Edward Jarvis, resolved to identify who had taken them. But Vincent Coggins did not just want to find them and get his drugs back. He also expressed a desire to kill them. Little did he and his criminal associates know that their every move was being monitored by the authorities following the hack of the EncroChat network. This would ultimately lead to the gang's downfall and Vincent Coggins' arrest and conviction. Now, after nearly 4 years of extensive reporting restrictions that have prevented the media from being able to identify those involved in the gang, the ECHO can reveal all following the conclusion of Jarvis's trial at Manchester Crown Court. The Coggins brothers, Jarvis, and a number of their associates were career criminals who would turn their hand to whatever paid. But during the drugs boom of the 1990s, they saw the opportunity to get rich quick, moving to the Costa del Sol to establish an organized syndicate that smuggled cocaine from South America through Europe and into the UK. Once there, the gang, known in the criminal world as the Huyton Firm, had established supply networks that spread from Plymouth to Scotland. The amounts of Class A drugs they dealt in resulted in extreme wealth. A court sentencing for Paul Fitzsimmons, a criminal associate, who answered directly to Francis Coggins, previously heard the OCG's overall involvement in Class A drugs over a 3-month period during 2020 was calculated at 148 kilograms of cocaine and 248 kilograms of heroin. However, the true amount could be significantly higher. Coggins' firm imported their illicit cargo through the port of Liverpool. Analysis of messages saw the group referring to workers at the port watching containers to see whether they attracted attention from port agency authorities. It's likely that these supply routes that opened up the Coggins gang to receive shipments from anywhere in the world were a driving force in allowing the gang to build international power and reputation. Investigating police officers told the ECHO no port workers were identified or investigated as part of their operation. Investigators do not know exactly when the gang started to use the encrypted messaging service platform EncroChat. The network was favored by high-profile criminals because it was believed at the time to be totally secure. Criminal organizations used the expensive phones, which cost between £1,200 and £1,500 for a 6-month contract, to organize their criminal activities without fear of their messages ever being seen by law enforcement. Using the EncroChat network, Coggins and his associates arranged and carried out multiple deals involving huge sums of drugs and cash. They communicated with other gangs, both in Merseyside and further afield, overseeing supply lines. They thought their messages were going secret, but little did they know police had obtained access to EncroChat after French and Dutch authorities had hacked into the network in early April 2020. Police were now monitoring their every move. Each user was assigned a unique handle on the EncroChat network, and through careful monitoring of each message, investigating officers were able to identify the gang members. At the top was Vincent Coggins, who went by the handle Moonlit Boat. Under him were Michael Earl and Jarvis, who went by the handles Blade Hedge and Soft Herb, respectively, while associate Paul Woodford used the handle King Wasp. Police were now monitoring their every move, Each user was assigned a unique handle on the EncroChat network, and through careful monitoring of each message, investigating officers were able to identify the gang members. At the top was Vincent Coggins, who went by the handle Moonlit Boat. Under him were Michael Earl and Jarvis, who went by the handles Blade Hedge and Soft Herb, respectively, while associate Paul Woodford used the handle King Wasp. Other associates, including Dean Burrows, Fitzsimmons, Darren Tierney, and Kevin Rimmer, were also linked to the handles Olive Scooter, North Knee, Scalp Staff, and Sappy Stag through their disclosure of personal information. Two other handles, Tall Canine and Mixed Jet, featured prominently in the messages between Vincent Coggins, Jarvis, Earl, and Woodford. Alex Leach, KC, a barrister who has prosecuted a number of trials relating to the gang, told Manchester Crown Court during the trial of Jarvis, the chat reveals that the user of both handles was based in Amsterdam during this period, and the evidence strongly suggests that he was Vincent Coggins' brother Francis. He played an important and authoritative role within the group. Jarvis deferred to him on most matters, and he often discussed important strategic decisions with his brother. Vincent Francis Coggins has not yet been apprehended in relation to the investigation. Messages between the Coggins brothers and Jarvis revealed the gang discussing the sales of tops, cocaine, and bots, heroin. The EncroChat messages showed the gang discussing international shipments and deals, while also advertising their Belter product to buyers in Scotland, South Wales, and elsewhere. But the gang also shared personal information about each other that helped the police's investigation. On one occasion, on May 11, 2020, Jarvis and Vincent Coggins discussed making a trip to Costco together. Jarvis used his UK mobile phone to connect to a mast that provided coverage to Costco. Vincent Coggins, who was a member at Costco, conducted 2 transactions where frozen crispy duck was purchased. Later that evening, the pair, using their EncroChat handles, to discuss if the duck could be cooked from frozen or if it had to be defrosted. However, although subordinate roles were played by a number of conspirators, above all of them were the Coggins, Francis in Amsterdam, and Vincent, referred to in some messages as the headmaster, at home in Cantrell Farm, now known as Stockbridge Village, and when the stash house, minded by Paul Glynn, was robbed and 30 kilos of cocaine was stolen. It was Vincent Coggins' loss, and it was he who controlled the response to taking it back. CCTV footage from a neighbor's home on Croxdale Road West showed the violent attack. Just before 9:30 a.m., a white van pulled up outside the stash house and 4 men got out, 3 wearing dark clothes and balaclavas, while a 4th posed as a delivery man. They rushed towards the house, where they were met by a stunned dad and son, launching into a savage attack that resulted in Paul Glynn almost losing an arm after it was slashed down to the bone. Images later shared by the police showed huge blood splatters sprayed across the front entrance to the house. Police received a call from Paul Glynn's son, Kenny, which said, "These lads just came into the house and started stabbing me, Dad, and there's blood everywhere." But by that time, and unknown to the Glynns until later, their attackers had left the scene with the bag containing £1 million worth of cocaine. Coggins knew the drugs were gone. It was here that the ruthlessness of the Coggins brothers was truly shown. Without a definitive name, Vincent Coggins' suspicions first fell on Kenny Glynn. Vincent Coggins messaged Jarvis, his eyes and ears on the investigation. "Got to be the son. Fuck it, I kill him." In the following days, Vincent Coggins directed his troops to find those responsible. After obtaining a CCTV video, he directed Jarvis and Fitzsimmons to distribute it across the underworld for help, and when he had a name, he started to put in place a plan of action. He messaged Earl, M8, can you sort pineapple tonight? A term used to refer to a hand grenade, while Woodford offered to buy a firearm and ammunition on Vincent Coggins's behalf. His target was Brian Maxwell, a professional drug dealer who later used the EncroChat phone network to source weapons including semi-automatic AR-15 rifles and an AK-47 to protect himself from attack, even when presented with potential evidence that Maxwell Jr. could not have been involved in the robbery because he had CCTV of him at home all day and advised to leave it until the following day. Vincent Coggins refused. He messaged Earl, no maid tonight, now got to be done, we don't mess round. It was only the failure in delivering the grenade to the attacker that halted the proceeding for another day. Vincent Coggins reported to Earl his intention at approaching Brian Maxwell's dad, Brian Maxwell Sr., with an ultimatum: return the drugs or the money, or he would pay. Having monitored the messages, the police took their first steps to disrupt Vincent Coggins' plans. On May 27th, they visited Brian Maxwell Jr.'s home and issued him with a threat to life notice, also known as an Osmond warning. An EncroChat message at around 2:30 p.m. that day said, he told me they were all out together, Maxwell Bosa Reeves, Saturday afternoon, till Sunday for anniversary drink. So Maxwell saying he got CCTV of himself not leaving house on Saturday is a fucking lie. Later that day, Coggins messaged Fitzsimmons saying, they all getting it. The Maxwells communicated with Vincent Coggins, Earl and Jarvis through a third party, a man who is still due to appear before the courts so can't be identified. Fearing an attack on his son was imminent, Maxwell Sr. sent a proposal to the gang. He knew his son had not committed the robbery, but understanding the threat said, me solution involves me, and me alone, paying the bill. And then it's me that's been robbed. I'd rather have him than the money. And it won't be in grip, 'cause I haven't got it any more than he has. Then it's down to me to find out who done it. Any money I've got means fuck all if he dead. Maxwell Sr. offered around £1,360,000 to Vincent Coggins, split into cash and the sale of land and a house. Vincent Coggins accepted the offer, but a chilling message to Earl later the same day showed it was just a temporary peace. Fuck me, still going to kill them all, but can take time. Now leave Dad alone, he wrote. Police disruption continued despite the movements of the gang. Police attended Maxwell Sr.'s home and gave him an Osmond warning, while Earl was issued a disruption notice. Unnerved by the police attention, Earl appeared to back out. However, Vincent Coggins was undeterred. He wrote back, I'm staying till I've got every penny and at least done of one of the coke. On June 3rd, Maxwell Sr. signed over the money, the land, and the house. With police sniffing around his business, Vincent Coggins asked Woodford to use his police contact, known as the Computer Man, to get copies of what was being said about him on the police national computer database. The contact told them there were new updates to Vincent Coggins' profile, but they had not been able to take a photo. These were arranged through another EncroChat contact, Michael Burns, who used the handle $1 Million. Merseyside police later told the Echo an anti-corruption team reviewed the messages and an extensive search of force systems in relation to those individuals was carried out to identify if there was any unauthorized access to information in relation to them and to identify any potential suspect. A spokesperson for the force said, a number of individuals were identified as having had access for a legitimate policing purpose, including staff from other forces, and no corruption was identified. When the stash house was first robbed, Vincent Coggins messaged Jarvis, no way Manx fuckers local, referring to the fact he could not believe a Manchester gang would be brave enough to come down the M56, carry out the raid. However, further examinations of the EncroChat network led investigators to the rival crime group behind the raid. Salford gangsters Jason and Craig Cox had targeted the stash house in collaboration with Liverpool career criminal Richard Caswell. The tight-knit Cox crime gang were involved in large-scale drug dealing, but in a bid to step up in the underworld, Jason Cox decided to join forces with Caswell, a well-known figure previously linked to a spate of car bombings across the city in 2003 and 2004. After a number of surveillance trips to scope out the address, they raided the house, making off with £1 million of cocaine, which Jason Cox split with Caswell. Jason Cox would go on to sell his shares to notorious drug dealer Leon Atkinson, an associate of both police killer Dale Cregan and Merseyside-based suppliers, the Cassidy brothers. In the aftermath of the robbery, Jason Cox said in EncroChat messages how he had got cocaine from the biggest firm in Liverpool, but he also realized the threat he now faced. Messages showed he inquired about renting a new flat and eventually fled with his brother Lee to Spain. Caswell was playing an even more dangerous game, as Coggins' firm desperately tried to work out who had ripped them off. They asked him directly if he had information regarding the raid. Caswell played dumb and said he would ask around, but passed on what they had told him to Jason Cox. The fallout when the identities of the robbers was seismic in the underworld. Arson attacks at properties linked to the Cox family in Salford were reported to Greater Manchester Police, while Caswell was slashed in HMP Manchester. A spokesperson for the Manchester force said they had issued a number of Osman warnings to the Cox family and their associates, and was working with the prison service after Jason Cox said he would have to look over his shoulder for the rest of his life. The Cox brothers, Caswell and foot soldier Ben Monks Gorton, who posed as the delivery driver, were all jailed last year. Coggins and his associates answered no comment in their interviews, but by this time, the North West Regional Organized Crime Unit, NWOQ, who were investigating the gang, had gathered thousands of messages that tied the Coggins operation together. The arrests of Coggins and his potentially deadly associates marked the first EncroChat arrests made by the Northwest Regional Organized Crime Unit, codenamed Operation Sub-Zero, and the first time the force's EncroChat evidence would have to stand up in court. Vincent Coggins, 58, of Woodpecker Close, West Derby, who was jailed for 28 years after he pleaded guilty to conspiracy to supply Class A drugs and conspiracy to commit blackmail. Paul Woodford, 58, of Marl Road, Kirkby, was jailed for 24 years and 6 months after he pleaded guilty to conspiracy to supply Class A drugs and conspiracy to commit blackmail. Michael Earl, 48, of Wallace Drive, Huyton, was jailed for 11 years after he pleaded guilty to conspiracy to supply Class A drugs and conspiracy to commit blackmail. Darren Tierney, 46, of Chatham Street, Stockport, was jailed for 12 years and 9 months after he pleaded guilty to conspiracy to supply Class A drugs. Paul Fitzsimmons, 60, of Birch Tree Court, West Derby, was jailed for 12 years and 6 months after he pleaded guilty to conspiracy to supply Class A drugs. Kevin Rimmer, 57, of Blacklow Brow, Huyton, was jailed for 16 years after he pleaded guilty to conspiracy to supply Class A drugs. Dean Borrows, 39, of Ledson Grove, Orton, was jailed for 14 years and 3 months after he pleaded guilty to conspiracy to supply Class A drugs. Paul Glynn, 59, of Croxdale Road, West, West Derby, was jailed for 11 years and 2 months after he pleaded guilty to conspiracy to supply Class A drugs. Robert Jarvis, 59, of Breckside Park, Anfield, is due to be sentenced after he was found guilty at trial for conspiracy to supply Class A drugs and conspiracy to commit blackmail. Vincent Coggins, who is understood to be in Europe, is wanted in the UK. Since the EncroChat breakthrough in April 2020, investigating police forces have managed to convict 1,600 criminals across the UK. However, Vincent Coggins and many of his Huyton Firm were some of the very first. Thank for watching, like and subscribe.